This is part 2 of the Chapter 1, Introduction to Biology lectures, recorded lectures, and I'm trying to, normally if I break it down like this, I'm able to type in here. Okay. Insert, we'll just try. Normally I could just type, but we'll just insert a text box because I am not happy with the way that, that's not, okay, here it is. Okay, so I am not happy with the way that the last slide went with me trying to hand type everything. So this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to write the list, and remember, you need to know the list of levels of organization from simplest to most complex. So these are called the levels of organization. And I'm trying to, here we go. I want to make this as big as it can be. The levels of organization of living things. Okay, so we would go atom, and then groups of atoms are called molecules. Groups of molecules are actually macromolecules. We have an entire chapter on the macromolecules. There are 4 main macromolecules. I'll put that in the list. They are nucleic acids, carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids or fats. So there are 4 main categories of macromolecules in living things, and the macromolecules are used to build the tiny structures within cells, like the nucleus and the mitochondria and the endoplasmic reticulum. We call these tiny structures organelles because they're like little organs. And then the organelles group together into cells. And some organisms stop at this level of organization because they're only one cell large. But if we get into multicellular organisms, groups of cells are called tissues. In humans, the skin is composed of epithelial tissue, the top layer of skin. Then we also have connective tissue underneath that that's more fatty. And we also have muscle and nervous tissue. So groups of similar cells are called tissues, and then tissues group together to form organs, like the heart and the liver and the lungs. And then groups of organs that work together to perform a function are called an organ system. We have 11 of those in the human body. I'll name them. I'm not going to type them all out, but we have, let's see, there's 11. So we have the reproductive system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the muscular system, the skeletal system, the urinary system, and the lymphatic system. And then I guess the immune system and the lymphatic system go together. Seems like I've missed one, but I know there's 11 total. So anyway, organs group together to form organ systems. Like, for example, the cardiovascular system is the heart and the blood vessels. And then organ systems group together to form the entire organism. Now, many organisms of the same species living in the same area are called a population. So that population means they have to be the same species. And then groups of populations of living things that live in an ecosystem are called the community or communities. And then the ecosystem is the community plus the habitat. So it's an area where living things, it's an area that's characterized by certain climate conditions, and like we talked about the coastal ecosystem, there are tropical ecosystems, there are like the forest, the northern forest of Canada, evergreen forest are types of ecosystems. There is the Arctic ecosystem, which of course is frozen. But their ecosystems are characterized by certain habitats and certain living things that reside there. And then all of the area of the earth, including all the ecosystems, we just call that the biosphere. Now, if I want to make this larger, which I do, let's go with 40. All right, okay, so that's going to be a slide, and I'm going to actually add it to these slides and repost in Moodle. Okay, so when you actually go to look at the slides, that one will be there. Now I'm going to go back so that you can see the slides a little bit bigger. This is a picture of a little portion of a mimosa tree. I love mimosa trees. You may know that you can do this trick, but you can actually touch the leaves in one spot on one of these little branches of a mimosa tree, and all the leaves will close up. They'll all come in together, or at least they'll if they're spread out, they'll come closer together and form kind of a V shape. And then you'll start watching all the ones around nearby to where you touch that leaf. They'll start closing up. So they respond to touch. They are sensitive to touch. And so that's a property of life called sensitivity. This is the property where organisms respond to stimuli in multiple ways. If you'll just search this on YouTube, mimosa leaves responding to touch, there are several little video clips that you can watch where a person will touch the leaves and you can watch them close up, or you can do it yourself. Certain responses are named, have a special name. So chemotaxis is a response toward or away from a certain chemical. This is a video. I don't know. I think it'll play during this recording.
Friends would walk up to me and be like, "What the f is in your mug?"
Oh my goodness, I can't believe I put that. Well, I can't help the ads. But anyway, you can hit
red blood cells essentially go where they're pushed. Blood pressure.
You can hit the closed caption if you want to. You can watch this on your own if you want to.
White blood cells are different.
But these are chemicals called inflammatory signals, these little green things. And these white blood cells are responding to them by moving out of the blood vessel toward the inflammatory signals.
They have the ability then to squeeze through the endothelial cells lining the
So here's your white blood cell.
leave the blood vessel.
It's in the blood vessel, but whenever it sees these signals here,
Red blood cells don't. They demonstrate chemotaxis, the ability to
they're going to leave the blood cell and move toward those inflammatory signals. That's positive chemotaxis.
So as a result, most white blood
Okay, and then there is also a video of, this is really good, but I'm not going to show it during this recording. You can watch it on your own. But phototaxis is movement toward or away from light. So this video is actually really cool. It's the movement of one arm of an octopus away from light. So just one arm of the octopus can detect light, and it will move away from the light. In fact, if they place food directly in the light, the octopus will ignore it, but as soon as they remove the light, you can watch the octopus grab the food, which looks like a cut up piece of fish or something like that. But anyway, this is very short, just like the first video. It's just a video clip, really, and it's really cool, so I would watch it if I were you. Some other examples of responding to stimuli are when our pupils in our eyes dilate in response to bright sunlight, but if we're in the darkness, our pupils become smaller, they constrict. Some microorganisms will swim toward light, and if it's a response toward the stimulus, we say it's positive, so that would be positive phototaxis. And some organisms move toward darkness, so that would be negative phototaxis because they're moving away from the light. Okay, so that's the property of life called response to stimuli. The property called reproduction. There is a picture here of a mother female dog, and she has got her puppies with her. The reproduction part is that she mated with a male dog, and his sperm and her egg, well, actually, many of his sperm and many of her eggs produced several puppies that she gave birth to, and there's just an example of that. Now, we're using the same picture for the property of growth and development. Growth means to get larger, so these puppies are going to get probably about the same size as their mother. That's growth. But development, they're also going to develop from, they developed from a single cell called a zygote into an embryo, into a fetus. Then they were born. Now we call them puppies. They're going to develop into adolescent dogs, which are dogs that are around 1 or 2 years old. And then they're going to grow up into adult dogs. So development, and then of course one day they'll get older and they'll go through the stages of death. So growth and development. Growth is just getting larger, and development is going through the different stages as we get older. Okay, now the property of life called homeostasis means that we are maintaining certain constant conditions within our body, within our cells. So it says on this slide that organisms have regulatory mechanisms to cope with environmental stresses. These mechanisms would include panting, sweating, shivering, etc. Panting in response to like if the polar bear is going to pant if the polar bear has just exerted a lot of energy, just been running, it's going to pant. It's going to sweat to release. I doubt very seriously a polar bear does a lot of sweating. Maybe does some shivering, but we sweat when we're hot because the sweat carries heat away from our bodies when it evaporates. This is a picture of a polar bear, Ursus maritimus, which is the scientific name for polar bear. And this polar bear has mechanisms to keep its body temperature warm because it is what we call a warm-blooded or endothermic animal. Homeostasis means steady state. Regulation is the process that organisms use to maintain that steady state. So homeostasis is the steady state. Regulation is the process to maintain it. So some examples. So let's say that homeostasis, let's go back, sorry. Let's do end show and find our homeostasis. Okay, so list examples. We'll just do them. I guess I can change this to numbers. Okay, so one example would be body temperature. And different organisms maintain body temperature in different ways. But humans, for example, if they are hot, they're going to they have certain regulatory mechanisms which will cool them off, which will lower their body temperature. So some of these things will be sweating to cool the body. And another example in the opposite direction would be shivering to warm the body. There are other examples as well. This is a very simplistic view of how we maintain body temperature. Another thing is when we need to cool our body, when we're hot, our blood vessels dilate. And when we are cold, our blood vessels constrict to hold in heat. But that's just one example. Another would be like different chemical levels in your blood glucose, for example. We maintain that using insulin and glucagon. So from our pancreas, insulin lowers our blood glucose levels, and glucagon raises our blood glucose levels. Another thing that raises our blood glucose levels is we get hungry when we have low blood glucose, and we eat. So that raises our blood glucose levels on its own.